She never thought her quiet love for music would one day take her onto a real stage. For most of her life, the piano was her private world, a place where she could breathe, think, and let her emotions flow in a language she didn't have to explain. Even as a child, she would sit on the small wooden stool in her home, lightly touching the keys, feeling a strange comfort that nothing else could give her. She never played loudly, never confidently, but always with feeling. She grew up believing that talent belonged to the bold ones, the people who stepped forward without fear. She never saw herself as one of them, but life has a way of pushing quiet people into moments they never asked for, moments that test what they truly carry inside. That moment came for her on an ordinary afternoon when she was called into the music room by her instructor. She thought it was just another day of practice, the same routine she followed every week. She walked in with her usual calm face, but her heart had its natural nervous rhythm, the kind that always came around music she cared about. The instructor told her about an upcoming performance. It wasn't a competition, just a small gathering where different students would perform in front of a full hall. Families, teachers, guests, people she didn't know. Her first reaction was confusion. Why her? Why now? She wasn't the type they usually picked. She wasn't the loud, confident student who volunteered to go first. She wasn't the one who played complicated pieces at high speed. She was quiet, soft, invisible in a way. But the instructor insisted. You should perform this time. It will be good for you. Her heart dropped a little. She could already feel the stage lights burning on her face, even though the event was days away. She smiled politely and nodded, but inside she was terrified. The piano was her safe place because no one watched her. She could mess up. She could play slowly. She could stop and breathe. But a stage was a different world. On a stage, every sound mattered. Every mistake echoed. Every eye watched. She walked home slowly that day, her mind full of spinning thoughts. She imagined herself sitting under bright lights, the hall filled with people she didn't know. Some smiling politely, others judging quietly, others waiting for her to mess up. She imagined her hands shaking on the keys. She imagined hitting the wrong note at the wrong time. The fear grew heavier with every step she took. The next day, during practice, everything felt wrong. The room felt smaller. The piano felt bigger. She couldn't focus. Every time she played a note, she thought about how it would sound in front of a crowd. Her fingers stiffened. Her heart raced. She tried to breathe but couldn't. Even the instructor noticed her discomfort. That was when she received the comment that stung more than anything else. The instructor looked at her kindly, but almost as if already expecting disappointment. Don't try anything complicated, she said softly. Just keep your performance simple. The audience doesn't expect much. Just stay safe. Play something basic. You'll be fine that way. Basic, safe, nothing complicated, nothing impressive, nothing memorable. The words sank into her chest like a weight. She knew the instructor meant well, but it felt like being told she wasn't capable of more. As if she had nothing special to offer. As if her only chance of not embarrassing herself was to keep things small. She nodded again, even though her heart burned a little. She wasn't angry, she rarely was, but she felt a quiet sadness. She wondered if everyone saw her the same way. A girl who played softly because she wasn't strong enough to play loudly. A girl who stayed simple because she didn't have the skill to go deeper. That night, she sat at her piano at home, staring at the keys. She didn't touch them at first. She just watched them, thinking about all the times they comforted her. The piano had been her friend on days she felt invisible. It had listened to her on nights she felt misunderstood. She played her emotions, not her skill. And maybe that was the reason she wasn't seen as good enough. But as she sat there, she realized something strange. Every emotional moment in her life had been shaped by this piano. Every peaceful night, every stressful day, every moment she escaped from the world a little, all came from these keys. So why was she suddenly afraid of expressing the one thing that had always been hers? She placed her hands on the keys slowly, letting her fingers settle into the familiar shape. She played a soft note, then another. The sound filled the quiet room. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel, not think. Slowly, her fear melted just a little. She wasn't ready for a stage, but she was ready to play for herself. And maybe that was a start. She tried different melodies, but nothing felt right for the performance. Everything felt too big or too empty. She didn't want to pick a complex piece just to prove something. But she didn't want to pick something so simple that it had no emotion. She needed something in between, something honest. Hours passed. The world outside grew darker. The small lamp beside her piano created a warm glow. She took a deep breath and played the melody she always went back to. A soft, gentle tune she created years ago. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't loud, but it was full of feeling. It carried her heart in every note. She played the first part slowly, then softened it even more. The melody flowed like a story only she understood. She didn't rush. She didn't force anything. She let her hands move the way her emotions guided them. And for the first time since she heard about the performance, she didn't feel scared. She felt connected, safe, herself. She realized something important in that moment. She didn't need to be impressive. She didn't need to amaze anyone. She just needed to be real. If she played from the same place she always played from, her heart, maybe people would feel something. And if they didn't, that would be okay too. Because at least she stayed true to herself. Over the next few days, she practiced quietly but with growing confidence. She didn't try to make the melody fancy. She didn't try to force any difficult runs or fast-paced sections. Instead, she focused on the emotion. Every note had meaning. She practiced not to impress but to express. Still, fear didn't fully disappear. Every morning she woke up with butterflies in her stomach. Every time she imagined the audience, she felt a wave of nervousness. But she didn't let it stop her. She practiced again. And again. And again. Each day, her hands shook a little less. As the performance day came closer, she noticed something unexpected. Practicing this piece didn't feel like preparing for a performance. It felt like preparing to share a piece of herself. That thought scared her but also encouraged her. She wasn't going on stage to show skill. She was going to share something honest. On the night before the performance, she couldn't sleep properly. She sat by her piano again, her room quiet except for the soft ticking of a small clock on the wall. She placed her hands on the keys. No rush, no pressure. Just one moment of connection before everything changed. She played her piece one last time. She played it gently as if whispering something to the night. When she finished, she didn't say anything. She didn't clap for herself. She just sat there, breathing slowly, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope. She stood up and walked to her bed, her heart still beating faster than usual. She knew tomorrow would challenge her. She knew she would walk onto a stage that felt too big for someone like her. She knew people wouldn't expect much from her, and maybe that was okay, because deep down, she carried something they didn't know about. Something simple, but full of meaning. Something quiet, but powerful when shared with honesty, and she was ready. Maybe not confident. Maybe not fearless. But ready. Tomorrow, she would walk onto that stage with shaking hands. She would play the melody that carried her through so many moments. She would let her heart guide her, even if her voice trembled. Tomorrow, the world would hear her, maybe for the first time. The morning of the performance arrived quietly, almost too quietly. She woke up early, long before the sun came up, and for a moment she forgot what day it was. Her room was still cold from the night, and she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. They looked the same as always, but she knew today they would carry the weight of something bigger. Something she couldn't fully explain. As she got ready, she kept telling herself to breathe slowly. One breath in, one breath out. But no matter how calm she tried to stay, her heart didn't listen. It beat fast, reminding her that this day wasn't ordinary. She tried to eat breakfast, but her stomach felt too tight. She tried to relax, but her thoughts raced. She wanted to do well, but she didn't want to be overwhelmed. She wanted people to feel something, but she also feared they wouldn't. When she reached the hall, the place was already buzzing with noise. Students moving around, teachers giving instructions, Families taking their seats, the gentle hum of people settling into the hall. She walked inside slowly, the size of the space hitting her all at once. The stage seemed larger than she remembered. The lights seemed brighter. Every seat looked like an eye waiting to watch her. She tried not to stare too much, so she walked backstage and sat in a quiet corner. Her hands were cold, so she rubbed them together gently. She kept practicing the melody in her mind, hearing it even without touching the piano. The sound comforted her a little, like a familiar voice telling her she wasn't alone. One by one, other performers went on stage. Some played guitar, some sang, some played their instruments confidently. The audience clapped after every performance. She watched quietly, feeling her nerves build with every passing minute. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for her turn to jump. Then the instructor approached her. She smiled softly and said, "You're next." Those two words sent a shiver through her arms. She nodded, stood up slowly, and followed the instructor to the side of the stage. She could hear the last performer finishing their piece. She closed her eyes for a moment and reminded herself why she was here. Not to impress, not to prove anyone wrong, but to share something honest. The host introduced her name, and the audience responded with polite claps. She stepped onto the stage, and the moment her feet touched the wooden floor, her breath stopped for a second. The hall felt huge, with rows of quiet faces looking her way. Some faces curious, some neutral, some distracted. She walked to the piano, trying to stay calm. Even though her legs felt slightly weak, she sat down carefully, adjusting the bench. The piano looked beautiful under the warm lights, its polished surface reflecting her nervous expression. She placed her hands on the keys but didn't press anything yet. Instead, she took one deep breath, the kind that comes from the deepest part of the chest, and let it out slowly. The hall fell into complete silence. She played the first note softly. The sound floated through the hall like a whisper. The next few notes followed gently, each one steady but filled with quiet emotion. At first, she could hear her own heartbeat louder than the music. Her hands trembled slightly. She worried she might mess up. But she didn't stop. She kept going. The melody was simple, something anyone could understand, even without knowing music. But inside that simplicity was a deep feeling only she could express. As she played, her hands began to move more naturally, no longer stiff, no longer afraid. It was as if the piano recognized her, welcomed her, and supported her. Slowly, she felt the world fade away. The audience didn't matter. The lights didn't matter. The stage didn't matter. All she felt was the music and the emotions she poured into it. Her fear melted with every note. Her confidence grew with every small rise in melody. She reached the part where she always added a little more expression. A tiny lift in rhythm. A gentle increase in volume. Nothing dramatic, but enough to carry emotion. She played it exactly the way she practiced the night before. Soft but deep, simple but meaningful. And for the first time since she walked onto the stage, she allowed herself to look up. She saw something she didn't expect. The entire hall was listening. Truly listening. Faces that were expressionless earlier now looked focused. People leaned forward slightly in their seats. A quiet stillness filled the room, the kind that happens only when everyone is pulled into a moment together. No whispers, no shifting sounds, no distractions. Just her music. She felt her throat tighten with emotion, but she didn't let it shake her playing. She moved into the next part, the most emotional section of her melody, the part that always reminded her of her past, of her quiet struggles, of the nights she played alone just to feel understood. Her fingers moved gently across the keys, and the notes carried her heart to every corner of the hall. As she played, she noticed something else. Some people were wiping their eyes. Some held their breath. Even those sitting far in the back were still, as if the music had paused their thoughts. Even the instructor who told her to keep it simple was watching with a shocked expression, as if seeing a different version of her for the first time. She wasn't performing anymore. She was connecting. Every single person in the hall felt the honesty in her playing, even if they didn't know her story. The melody wasn't loud, it wasn't complex, but it carried something real. Something pure. Something human. She played the final notes slowly, letting them fade into the air like a soft goodbye. As the last sound drifted away, she lifted her hands gently from the keys. For a moment, there was complete silence. A deep silence that felt almost unreal. Then it happened. The audience rose to their feet, all of them at once. A wave of applause filled the hall, loud, warm, and full of emotion. She froze for a second, unable to believe what was happening. She blinked, thinking maybe she misunderstood. But the applause grew louder. People were smiling at her, clapping, some even shouting, "Bravo," with genuine admiration. She didn't know what to do. She had never imagined this moment. She stood up slowly from the piano bench, her hands trembling, not from fear anymore, but from the overwhelming surprise. She looked around the hall, feeling her chest tighten in a way she couldn't describe. Tears formed in her eyes, but she held them back with a soft, grateful smile. She bowed slightly, and the applause continued. It didn't stop. It didn't fade immediately. It went on and on, as if the audience wanted her to feel every second of their appreciation. She saw the instructor clapping emotionally too, her expression filled with pride and disbelief. In that moment, something changed inside her. All the doubts she had about herself seemed small. All the fears that once felt impossible suddenly felt far away. She realized that she didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to be flashy. She didn't need to play like someone else. She only needed to be honest. And the world responded. As she walked off the stage, some students smiled at her. Some gently touched her shoulder in encouragement. Some whispered, "That was beautiful." She didn't know what to say, so she just smiled back. Her heart still beating fast. She went backstage and finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. She sat down on a small chair and covered her face with her hands, not to hide but to let her emotions settle. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. Not judged, not compared, but understood. Later, when she stepped outside the hall, the evening air felt different, softer, warmer, and she felt different too. She realized that sometimes people tell you to keep it simple, not because they doubt your heart, but because they don't know what your heart can do. They don't see the hidden strength that comes from quiet people. They don't realize that simplicity, when filled with truth, becomes something powerful. She walked home with a peaceful smile, carrying the memory of that standing ovation like a secret gift. She didn't need to announce it to anyone. She didn't need to boast. The moment lived inside her now, forever. Her simple melody, born from quiet nights and gentle emotions, had touched hundreds of hearts in one unforgettable moment, and that was enough.